Welcome to In the Flow, where we explore how marketing leaders leverage operations to eliminate chaos and capture opportunity. I'm Anthony Welgemoed, CEO of Ziflow. Welcome to In the Flow. Today's conversation is about what happens when creativity grows up and gets operational. We'll explore how creative teams can scale without losing quality, how to translate creative work into real business impact, and what practical technology choices, including AI, actually make sense right now. If you're a creative ops leader, or a CMO trying to do more with less, this episode is for you with our guest, Perrie Schad. Perrie, you're a two-time founder, which I think is amazing. It's an amazing achievement. Love for you to tell us a little bit about, what motivated you to start your companies, what you're working on today, and also sort of what you learned from founding your first company that you sort of using to inform your latest venture.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me, Ant. This is really exciting. I'm a very big fan of the podcast, so it's great to be here.
Thank you.
Basically, I've been really starting kind of my business since 2017. I realized pretty early in my career that I wanted to go off on my own. I got so accustomed to all of my experience kind of being filtered by another organization's beliefs, their product, their system, their tone of voice. And so I felt like my opportunity to really use all of my expertise and all of my experience was kind of limited based off of working for another organization. I've loved every single product that I've ever worked for. I've loved every single team and company. But when it came to really the value that I wanted to give to the industry, I really needed to go off on my own so that I really wasn't filtered in any way. And filtering is definitely a pretty loose term on that. So, for example, when I did my very first Henry Stewart event as a business owner, I wore a fluorescent orange suit. I wouldn't have done that working for Global Edit. I wouldn't have done that for Splashlight or even Colgate Palmolive. But for Perry Schad, that was very on brand. And so just really being able to step into the love of this industry. I love the photography industry. I love the creative industry. I have been every single role on set except for a hairstylist. And so being able to look at how the creative production workflow functions, how your studios function, the physical space, the digital space, for me is really important to be able to share all of that knowledge. And so my consulting company ended up starting in 2021. Nothing like going through a global pandemic with
Yeah,
starting a whole
exactly.
brand new company. So definitely kind of the go big or go home mentality with me. Why not is really a motto in life for me. And so starting these businesses, starting my consulting company, really, I thought that was the end all be all. I thought that was my baby. I thought I want to do this for the next 10, 15 years. After that, who knows what the world is going to offer me. And then there was an opportunity to start a tech company because that's a normal thing to do.
That's what you do.
Like
Yeah.
it is not something that was ever on my radar. It's not something that I ever thought would ever cross my desk. But my business partner came up with this really brilliant technology and I had to participate. I had to be a part of it. It's really important to me to have some continuous impact into the photo world. And not even just e-commerce and PDP and the business side, but truly photography in its like core art form. So the second company is Mojave Color, which is launching in 2026. As we all know, there's always delays and things, but it's a tool that's really gonna help the e-commerce and PDP and user experience and sustainability aspects because it is a technology that allows the onset team to more closely represent the color of their physical product to their digital asset. So color management, color calibration is probably one of the biggest issues in our industry that we
Mm.
don't talk about because there isn't really a solution. Calibrating monitors, doing things by eye is just not sustainable. It's not accurate. There actually is no such thing as accuracy in this world, but this is an opportunity to create consistency and to do it beyond human perception. So, really diving into color science and math and more of the color aspect of our industry, less so about like hex colors and color matching and things like that. So, I do know that I'm kind of going off tangent a little bit on your question.
No. No, it's good. I would actually just to delve one level deeper on your new venture. So, is it gonna be for teams that is gonna be on sets and they can your software will be able to tell them if the color is matching or what just if you can just dig a bit deeper. I'm quite interested because color is, yeah, I've been working with like color from a sort of engineering point of view since
Mhm.
late 90s. So yeah.
So when you were 5 years old? Totally, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, it is hard, and we've had the same issue where clients want to confirm the colors, but when you actually go test colors in, when it's being produced, whether it's packaging, you take for instance in print and so on, the colors are never, yeah, they're never going to be, even though they want them perfect, it's always a little bit off there.
Absolutely, and so the Mojave Color is a very different process than the traditional, calibration. It's actually camera color calibration, and it allows
Okay.
us to work within the color science field, which has a scale of 0 to 100 called delta E, and delta E is a comparison of 2 colors and how closely they are represented, and so human perception is, 1.0 to 3.0 delta E. We have monitors that are anywhere from kind of 2 to 8. Cell phones, any kind of mobile phone is really going to be 4 to 8. So as we're getting farther and farther away from zero point 0.0, those colors are shifting more and more. They're becoming very obvious that there is a discrepancy between whether it's angles, whether it is a laydown versus an on model shot that's maybe in the same page. What Mojave Color allows us to do is create um, kind of custom profiles based off of your onset lighting, all of your equipment, and you take all of that data, create a custom profile in real time that then you apply to all of your images, assuming obviously that you haven't adjusted your lighting in any way. But this then you do a pass fail. It is a pass fail instantly on set, whether or not you are above or below 1.0 delta E, so below 1.0. So we are beyond human perception unless you have really crazy special eyes and you can see very clearly all those things, but it takes into consideration kind of the substrate, and there's certain materials obviously that this won't work on, reflective materials, things like that, but it's a objective data point that you have to meet in order to move forward with an application. And it's a very small niche tool. It fits right in between Capture One and your workflow management tool. So
Yeah.
it's not, we're not disrupting your workflow by any means. It works within hot folders. So it's a very, very seamless integration, but the impact is great because now you're talking about that product is obviously color accuracy is not, it's scientifically impossible. There's millions of different factors that come into play about your viewing conditions, the equipment, the changing viewing conditions, whether you're in mixed lighting, what kind of filters you have on your phone. Generally, we're shopping on our phones anyways. And
Yeah.
so, how do you make sure that that works? And so, our 100% is 65% accurate. Nobody can do
Yeah.
100%. Nobody can even do 67%. And so, allowing teams to have that objective data. Leadership now has that objective data to understand. You're then able to follow those products to speak with customers. Are you seeing less returns? Because that color is more what the customer is anticipating to receive. It really does take into like consideration undertone, substrates. So if you have that hunter green across 4 different types of fabric, that hunter green won't match each hunter green, but it'll make sense for that substrate. And then there's that consistency across the website. Goes into post-production, you don't retouch that product. You retouch the background, you retouch the model, everything around it, but that product stays the same. And so it saves on retouching, it saves on time, it saves on return rates, and then naturally, sustainability. We Mojave Color really wants to invest in sustainable practices and giving back to the environment and cleaning up these landfills of so much waste that goes into our environment. So it's a very large organization, it's a very large concept, but the tool itself is very, very specific, very niche, and a very easy installation.
That's brilliant. Well, good luck, and just let us know as soon as you launch. It'd be really interesting to follow that. And in terms of, I mean, so you've gone from photography to, I know you work with Global Edit. We know them well. We sort of come across them with Ziflow. We're in similar space, but we've known them since the Proof HQ days as well. They great with like again with shoots, etc. So you were there for a while, and you talked about creative ops. But you just, how did you make the switch from just pure photography and then all the way into creative ops, and now sort of a tech founder?
Yeah. Step by step. This was never a 5-year plan. I don't do 5-year plans. they're really hard for me because as soon as I have a goal, I'm going to get it done in the year. That's just my nature. I wanted to be a director by the time I was 34. I was a director by the time I was 29. So just being able to see that success. And so for me, I love photography. I love the art form. I love cameras. I love just the expression of photography. But when I was on set and I was a photographer, I found myself caring more about how plexiglass was stored and where we were putting the gaff tape and how we were managing our equipment than actually shooting whatever shoes were on my set. So very early in my career, when I was an assistant, I was a digital tech, a photographer, art director, producer, makeup artist, surprisingly. And so as I started to realize that like my interest is in photography, but not necessarily in e-commerce photography. Maybe I need to start shifting where I get really excited. And it's as nerdy as it comes. It is organization, it is efficiency, it is systems. It's like making sense of a chaotic world. It's something that my brain just does automatically. I'll sit in a restaurant and I'll like reframe the workflow of how the waiters are walking around the tables. Like it doesn't turn off. So how can I leverage this? And how can I really do this every single day for a living and be paid for it? Awesome. That's incredible to me. Mm. When I was at Gilt, my boss at the time, I was a photographer at Gilt. My boss at the time, we had a review and I had said that I really want to be an assistant studio manager because I didn't want to take her job. And she goes, "Well, I really want to shoot." And I was like, "Okay." So we literally just swapped places. I became studio manager and she became a photographer. And then from there, it just kind of spawned into I was able to build out photo studios. I was able to understand equipment and managing equipment and repairing it, buying it, resource management, managing budgets really, really early in my career. And it just kind of progressed from there. I got recruited by Splashlight Studios from Guild.com. And from there, we did the same thing as these giant consulting projects that we would work on with clients. Rue La La was the very first one that we did, a 150-page presentation on redeveloping their entire creative workflow. And my brain was buzzing. I loved it. I loved every single moment of it. I remember sitting with my boss and I'm sitting and talking about a dumpster and how excited I was that we have a dumpster. We can start clearing things out and make some moves and move this forward. And he goes, "You really love what you do." And I was like, "Why do you say that?" But yes, he goes, "Because you're smiling about a dumpster." That's who I am.
That's
I
when
will
you know.
smile. It's just anything that pushes the needle forward. Nothing is too small to me. Every detail counts. Every step makes sense to me. And that just kind of naturally progressed. And around like 2014, 15, 16 is when creative operations became a title. And it wasn't widely used. Still just now kind of becoming it.
Yeah, it's still very limited, but yeah.
So that from there, and it was very siloed. So you had design operations, you had studio, you had photo.
Mm.
Like every industry kind of had their own version of it. And it just I get excited going to work every single day. I don't have bad days at work. I have bad moments. I have frustrating moments, but I wake up very excited to go to work so that I get to play with puzzles. That's like patterns and puzzles and data and organization and like how are things connected? How do you interact technology with the human psyche? Like it all just fascinates me. So the progression felt very organic, but it really was just kind of stepping into things that I love to do, things that I love to observe. I'd rather build a beautiful photo studio for someone else to make something gorgeous with it. That
And
to me is
if
great.
so, yeah, and sort of stepping into the upside, obviously, technology. There's a people part of it. There's the process part. Yeah, tech is now a really big portion of what people are looking at, the operations, etc. What did you use? And what sort of the first sort of pieces of tools that people should be looking at? You think?
I think like I'm not a big believer on a single source of truth. I don't think that that's actually possible. There's different departments and different information, and that just then creates just a big muddy mess. And so I think it's some form of workflow management tool, whether that's a PM tool that you've now automated into, very much so workflow management. But how do you take what's the intake process? And then how are you seeing those steps? What does that iteration look like? But then who has access to that? Who has oversight into that? Because I really think that it's not a matter of everybody needs to have an opinion, but I think everybody needs to have eyes on it. And creating that level of transparency eliminates a lot of questions, a lot of emails, a lot of this could have been an email type meetings, is just having some form of transparency and collaboration and then clear communication. So to me, my consulting company is platform agnostic. And so for me, it's really what does that team require? Do they need a far more robust production calendar? Some people have great workflow, but their calendar, which is their kind of source of truth, doesn't make sense. It's not visually intuitive. You have to do too many clicks to kind of find that information.
And this calendar, is it like a resource calendar? It's like who's doing what when, or what does this calendar have?
Yeah, I would say this is like a really a production calendar. So when are images
Yeah.
gonna be ready? When is, when do you have to have the campaign set up? When is the deliverable? What's the different phases of deliverables? Just really seeing the full end to end with all the key milestones. The principles is really transparency, communication, and collaboration. As long as you can touch all three of those, whatever tool you're doing or using that's important to you, as long as it follows those three principles, I feel that initially you will find success. Obviously, it's not that simple as you continue to grow and scale that process, but I think starting off with those three things is really critical for any success of any implementation.
In terms of like, we obviously got the influx of AI tools. How do you
Mhm.
think that's going to affect the industry? Like both from the production side and from the management side? Because obviously people are talking about a lot of like content being produced without, hey, you don't need to shoot anymore, maybe, or things like that. If you look into your crystal ball, how do you think this is going to play out?
I'm an early adopter of it because I found it really fascinating, but I am not scared of it. It does not scare me. I don't feel that my job is ever threatened. When you do consulting, AI could easily take my entire job. It is looking at efficiencies, it's looking at patterns. But to me, it has the power that you give it. Any technology has the power that you give it. So if you allow it to make you fearful of your job, then you are allowing it to take your job. To me, if you are scared that something that is inanimate could take your job, what are you doing to leverage that? What are you doing to learn? I think copywriters are some of the biggest hit industry or departments that I've seen of being really fearful about losing their jobs because of AI. A lot of people have lost their jobs because of that. But how can, as a copywriter, for example, how can you leverage AI to introduce new skill set? How can you become a prompt expert? You know words, you understand phrasing. How do you become a prompt expert so that you can leverage all of these other tools to make something that much better? Using it as an iteration tool. So to me, it's really looking at how does this make me better versus how is this going to take something away from me, and asking questions and being curious and testing things out. There's, testing out different tools. Free versions are great and everything, but a lot of companies have tools that already have AI embedded in them.
Mm.
We've been using AI for a lot longer than the last 3 years. I don't think that people realize that automation is AI. And so if you're talking about connecting tools, you're leveraging AI. But if you're talking about image generation, of course, that's something that's going to be new. And I think you don't need to do these big grand investments in order to leverage AI. It's really looking at what tools you already have, you're already paying for. Hello, Gemini. Yes, it's added onto your business account, but access to AI in all kinds of different capacities, different skill sets and things. ChatGPT has a great free version, Perplexity. Like there's all kinds of different tools out there that you can use that your team already owns. How can you make those work? I don't know if we're going to see AI take over everything. I think that creatives are incredibly brilliant. We won't ever let it fully take things over. We didn't let the fountain pen take over, writing with paper and pencil. We didn't let photography take over painting. We didn't let digital take over film. I think that digital photography still is a very creative medium. Like it is just the power that we see it. And I think that we're going to see things kind of level out over the next couple of years. I thought it would have leveled out by now, but with the rate of change with AI especially, um, I don't think that we've seen I think we're gonna see a bit more what's the wording I wanna put here? It's not rocky, but I think there's just gonna be a lot more, oh, what it's
I think it's I think it's if yeah, it's like I think what scares most people, it's like we don't know what to expect here. Sort of when the internet came around and so on, we sort of saw the progression. Mobile cell phones came around, and then mobile apps, and oh, that's going to be a big change. But it didn't really. It just was another way or another channel to do things, sell things, and so on. Obviously, there was a big leap when ChatGPT came out, and it's like, wow, okay, some of this writing I've been doing, it just like does it in seconds, and it's pretty good. It's maybe not like the top end of writing. So I think when we talk about copywriters and so on, I think the best of the best will be then do the unique creative storytelling. It maybe will and maybe weed out's probably a bit of a strong word, but ultimately anyone who's sort of the bottom 50%, you know, ChatGPT, et cetera, that I can do that. But it's the good, people are really good at their art. I think it'd be tough to replicate that because there's some unique things that you just can't figure out. You can't connect emotionally, all of that stuff that you can, that someone, another human can interact with another, will connect with another human. It's going to be super hard, I think, just to replicate that. And those are the moments we probably will be looking for more in the future than we have. Yeah, so let's see how it plays out. But it's moving quick, and we'll see how that curve of adoption and sort of advancement goes.
Yeah. I also think that learning to be curious about it. Like I know that's a very simple concept, but reading articles, understanding how things are connected, being able to anticipate some things kind of coming down the pipeline, to me it's curiosity. It's wanting to understand. And when you understand something, you know how to manipulate that thing. Like that's true in life and in business. And like what's that strategy? How do you push this? How do you actually introduce AI to push your company forward because you're no longer scared of it? And I there's a lot of opportunity there. It's just really some of it's an individual journey that people have to go on.
Yeah. But it's typical early adopters and people who have trust, so you can have people, who are curious, they'll adopt it super early, and then others who'll wait and see, do I trust this? I do think there's some of these YouTube videos and LinkedIn posts about like, hey, using ChatGPT wrong, you should be doing these 5 prompts and so on. To me, as a person who develops products, I'm like, well, if that's the case, the product needs to improve. It's not the user's fault, it's the product's fault. So the fact that you're saying we're using it wrong, it also puts people off, I think, ultimately saying, hey, now you've told me I'm wrong. So I think once we sort of get through all of those stages, I think it'll settle down and just become part of our normal sort of usage. But
Mhm.
yeah.
I agree.
I mean, in terms of, I've spoken a lot of people about like, yeah, you have creative and you have creative ops, and there's sometimes this gap, this gap in communication, expectations. What's the best way you think, or making sure those two teams work really well together? And I think you've especially seen it because you on set on shoot, so it's ops and creatives right there. But often in like business settings, you have like an internal agency or team, a creative team, and an ops team, and they can be separate. How do you keep them aligned and see the actual business impact?
So I actually had that experience when I took a break from the photo industry and worked at Colgate Palmolive. So I was the design operations manager for the global packaging team. So I actually sat on site with all of the global designers, but also with their Aquent counterparts. So a third party agency living on site. And my job was to actually blend those relationships. It was very tense between the two. Who's giving communication? Who's receiving communication? It's unclear. There's not a whole lot of structure to this process. And so I took a step back, and this is where that I can't turn my brain off is take a step back and really observe meetings, observe individuals, observe how systems are used, how technology is used. Yes, but systems like how are you providing information to the creatives, and how are the creatives providing information back to the creative ops teams? What is that level of communication and collaboration? Again, my core pillars here, to me is really important to understand how does it function now? And then it becomes very clear where you can improve that. So, a lot of it was communication in that experience. And I think a lot of it tends to be the lack of communication because you're not speaking the same languages. And so if you have the creative team who is very clear in what they need, what levels of information they require, and they're not receiving those, how do they go and ask for it back? And throughout about a year and a half, we restructured the Aquent. entire Aquin contract to the success of saving $2.5 million over 3 years. And so being able to save that much money by really outlining what is Aquin's role, what levels of work are they doing, what is their output, what is their input, but also what is their output, what is expected of them. And so then when creative ops teams, or in this case, design ops, is working with them, they now know exactly what information needs to go there. You're not giving any more or any less. It's exactly the information that they need. And it creates a level of collaboration. Then there's more cohesion. There's better alignment, I think, when it's very crystal clear on what somebody needs and how they need to receive it. And that's true with the language that you use. That's true with the templates you're talking about, what software you're putting all of this in. So I think it's also understanding that creatives have a very different brain than the rest of the organization. They are going to be much more right brain. Your language, your tone of voice, the way that you present yourself will impact how they receive that information as well. The creatives, we are very emotional creatures. We're very business savvy. We're very, we can be very aggressive and opinionated at things. So how do you leverage that? And like really being able to talk to them in a way that makes sense to them. I had somebody approach me at a conference that said they work more on kind of the finance leadership aspect, and they had never managed creatives before. How do they approach the creative mindset? And I just said, you need to listen to them. And he's like, but I like his left brain, his business brain just couldn't understand that concept. As like, you just really need to all they do is complain. You need to sit and listen to them. What are they complaining about? What's the pattern? You love data, you love metrics. There's patterns in that. What's the pattern that the creative team is expressing to you? What is their frustration, and how can you fix the thing that the emotions are kind of masking? So, it's not being scared to have tough conversations. It's being respectful, but not being scared to have tough conversations. Coming up with a game plan, signing off on that game plan, and respecting that game plan. Making sure that everybody is on board and how you move forward. So it's, my consulting company compared to a lot of other consulting companies in industry is much more tactical. I don't really work in the strategic world. There's plenty of people that are great at that 50,000, 100,000 foot view.
Mm.
I'm more boots on the ground. And how do we actually automate this email to save everybody 10 hours? I want to know those little things. So for me, there's other people that could answer the strategy, but for me, it's the tactical stuff. It is communicating. It is being respectful. It is aligning. It is having open and honest conversations and finding a way to speak the same language or agree on a language that makes sense to everybody. I think creative operations, you can either look at operations creatively, or you're looking at the operations of the creative team. And understanding what that team requires is just a huge part of the conversation. Is what is your perspective? What is the goal here? And how do you shift as a creative ops person? How do you shift your mindset, your right left brain, to better articulate to the creative team and then articulate to leadership to get everybody aligned?
If we talk about the communication breakdown, what does that actually look like? Because because it's sometimes difficult to identify that, because you think like it's this person, it's a culture fit, it's this or that. In your experience, what does that breakdown look like?
I think it's forgetting who your audience is. We think that we need to communicate clearly because we want to articulate our business idea, our creative idea, our opinion. We are focused on how we articulate something, but we're not really focusing on how it's going to be received. And to me, that is actually far more important. As somebody that is neurodivergent, I did a masterclass with Henry Stewart in September about different learning styles. Being neurodivergent is one thing, but having different learning styles. How do you receive information? And if you're focused more on how you articulate it, but not how they're going to receive it, you are going to have a fundamental breakdown in communication. It's usually not going to be the same. You might not be a visual person talking to another visual person. So however you need to communicate, whether that's to leadership, to a peer, to an employee, how do you best receive information? How best do you receive criticism or praise? How do you like to articulate your information? And so if you have somebody that does better with a really black and white presentation versus a very colorful presentation, I know you care about your voice, but cater to their needs so that they are more quick to understand and quick to align and catch up to what you're saying. Then from there, you can have a more open conversation or, dive in a little bit deeper. But I think it sounds so simple, but I think there's a lot of people, the majority of people that I've worked with and organizations that I've worked with, whether in the corporate world or my consultancy, don't understand that. It's always, they don't get it. They don't get it. Well, how are you presenting it to them for them to get it?
And so I mean, you've had an interesting journey because you've gone from the creative side into the operations and now technology side. Now, for someone just starting out, I think it's quite unique because a lot of people want to go from ops and hey, I want to go be more creative, and I feel like ops is boxing me in. But I think it's great that you've done the other way around, and obviously you're passionate about that, which is awesome. What would you tell younger people today starting out, like whether they're in the creative side or more maybe on the operation side, but what in terms of learning more, I know curiosity is obviously top of the list, but what else could they be looking to do to really gain experience?
So I actually get asked this a lot by people kind of in their late 20s that I think might feel a little jaded by the creative industry already. Sad but true.
Yeah.
And like, how do you break out into maybe more of a management role or, yeah, the more ops side of things? Yes, curiosity is one thing. Asking questions. I think asking questions and finding mentors and finding people that have done it. There's so many different ways. What's great about creative operations is it still is not defined on what it is. It's very ambiguous. It's very nuanced. So if you find something that is not popular, is not really a common kind of sect of the industry or the role, lean into that. If you have
Yeah.
a special skill set that just makes you want to dive into operations, how do you leverage that skill set? And you don't need to conform to what other creative operations and team members or industry professionals how they do their role. It can really be very independent to you and very niche to you. But I think that it's really going to networking events. Like it's the classic stuff. That stuff is tried and true for a reason, and going and having FaceTime with people. If you are starting out in your career, I know that, money for coffee might be hard to find, but offer to take somebody out for coffee or send them a gift certificate and just kind of pick their brain. People are far more willing to share information, I think, than people realize because you can't replicate creative operations from person to person. That how you interpret is gonna be different than how I deliver it, and, there's books out there as well, but I also just there's an exploration about it. It's asking questions, it's observing, it's seeing what options are out there within your organization. I'm interested in kinda stepping into this role, HR. Are there opportunities for me to mentor or to support a business leader in some capacity? Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. The ones that do put themselves out there, they're gonna more likely get that role.
They
They're more gonna
they
get
will get
the
the
spot.
chances. You were talking about Henry Stewart. What other are you doing any other in-person events this year?
So there's always Flow. Pixels Flow is another amazing event. Henry Stewart definitely keeps me busy. I do the New York and LA version, but there's also the Creative Technology in October, which is really, really incredible. Their DAM conference, I think, is going to be combining with Creative Tech. And then it's finding just industry events. So, Capture One had an event a couple years ago that was fantastic. It was a demo. They also had an event at their new workspace over the summertime. Really, once you kind of go to one, you make those connections, you have those word of mouth opportunities. A lot of stuff hasn't been scheduled yet. So I'm kind of just waiting for my calendar to pack up pretty soon here.
That's great. Perry, I mean, all the best with launching the new platform. Hope it goes really well. And excited to see it. And yeah, thank you so much for joining today and sharing your experiences.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sharing insights from around the marketing, tech, and operations industries on how marketing and creative teams can get more done together.